Welcome to Policy Sass, where we decode the madness, myth, and marketing of the insurance world with a little sass and a lot of facts, even opinions. I'm Emily West Pollock with Ground Up Insurance, and
I'm Amy with Call Your Insurance Group.
so today we are putting the glittery $39 clickbait ads on blast because, child of God, that's not insurance. That's a receipt for disappointment.
Frustration, anger, more frustration.
We've all seen the ads. So there's like full coverage for $39 a month. I wish. No agents, no hassle, instant insurance, get it in seconds. And the elusive hidden discounts that all agents leave off unless you go through their clickbait. And I saw a new one that took the cake today that talked about how if you haven't had a DUI in 5 years, that you should be able to get this huge discount right now. So
Nice.
since DUIs are so normal, let's talk a little bit about what clickbait is first, Amy.
Okay, so I would define it as an advertisement that is so outstanding that it causes an overwhelming response in the people seeing it. So you're baiting customers or clients to click on it in order to solicit their business, um, which is frustrating because those $39 a month insurance ads are not accurate because they're just not. You cannot find $39 a month insurance. I don't even think if Jesus was on earth, he would pay $39 a month for insurance.
So
Yes.
here's the other thing. Clickbait is not offered by carriers. It is offered by lead generating machines, whether it's a virtual assistance company that wants to be hired by agents so that they can call and work these leads for them. And they're wonderful. They call multiple times and get business done. Um, but they're also a place where we as agents can buy leads for people who are interested in insurance. But when I see those leads, I think I'm going to get a list of some comparisons of people that I can sign up with right then and there where I won't have to talk to a person. Do you get the same feeling on clickbait that it's just going to be this here, choose between these?
Because I've myself fallen prey to some clickbaits because I'm like, huh. And more of it's morbid curiosity. I'm like, what are they doing or what are they saying? And I kind of want to know, and you go down that rabbit hole. And some of them, not that everyone is reading it correctly, don't tell you that you're getting it there. I mean, it literally tells you you're signing up for to be contacted, but some of them are very vague and very misleading. So I think it's a mix of both, depending on where you are in the internet. And I think that's a lot of the frustration. And a lot of the frustration when we try to contact those people because then they're angry. They've been called by 900 people and all they wanted was an insurance quote.
And a lot of times when I was talking to people, even who I pulled off those leads, I would strongly suggest to them they pick a few companies that they really like and go straight through the carrier or find an agent to do that shopping for them so that they had one contact. And that
Yep.
was the big mistake, was putting that info, being coaxed in there. I always like the one that said, if you're over this age, you should be getting an additional discount. Well, what's the first thing you give to someone when you're taking your information? Name, date of birth. So people know how old you are. and they want to retain your business. It's not like there's these magical discounts on there that we can put on there or leave off. We want you to have the best price too. And I think people forget that. But I don't want you to just have the best price. I want you to have the best coverage. And that can
Right.
be a very different, animal on making sure that you're taking and utilizing the best options and the best products, because those are not always with the big companies.
Right. I think another side of this, the clickbait ads that we've seen popped up, and I think has been one of my pet peeves, is the influencer ads. Uh, the Karen who's on TikTok saying, "Oh my God, you shouldn't be paying $100 a month for car insurance."
I wish I was paying $100 a month for car insurance.
Right? So I feel like that's also in the same family as those clickbait ads, is the people on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, and they're not in the insurance world, but they're trying to funnel people into those clickbait streams. They're like, click here and you too can only pay $15 a month. Like the one I was watching yesterday, the girl in the video, because I paid very close attention because she actually had a statement. And she's like, "This was my car statement." And you could see, and it's 100, 300, 100 liability, $500 deductible, and it was like $150 a month. And she's like, "And now it's only this." And now it's dropped to like $68 a month. But lo and behold, she's got a $1,500 deductible now, and she's got 2550 liability. Well, of course your the cost of your insurance dropped. Like those are two separate coverages. So you're telling people that all they got to do is go here and they magically too can get $60 insurance. But what they're not telling people is there's a reason why it's $60 insurance.
Exactly. I saw another one today that have you ever seen those men who go around and mow people's yards just out of the goodness of their heart?
Hmm.
Freaking love those commercials, and they transform, or influencers, they transform, and it's such a good thing. They actually had this lady, they had this older woman, and they were going to go in there and bless her 3 ways. So they went into her house, and this guy did all the dishes and cleaned up her kitchen. And then she had a plumbing problem, and he fixed her plumbing problem. And then he goes and he takes his phone and pulls up how she can get cheaper insurance. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I got suckered in because I was like, this is going to be great. I love to see people do nice things for people. And then the last one was insurance. And I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I got taken in. Um, and it's really upsetting. And I like the other one because I've had people who told me that they didn't have to give you anything legally to give you an insurance quote. The ones that say they shouldn't be asking for your date of birth or your driver's license or your address. So, how exactly do you think we're going to come up with the amount that we pay you? Because all of that is based on all of those things. Right or wrong, we are going to look at your credit score, not a hard pull, but there is going to be a soft pull to get that number on your credit, because they just determine that people who have good credit scores are financially responsible.
Explain the difference to everyone because I don't think people are very clear on what that is.
A soft pull is where they just go in and get a score. Your banks and everyone else is going to do that so they can determine if you're doing well with your credit or if something's changed, so that they can determine if you need a higher credit limit or if they should bring your rate up or down depending on how you're doing financially. Although it is interesting, I live in South Texas and there is a large group of Hispanic people that do not use credit. So their credit does not look very good on paper, but they pay cash for everything.
Yep.
So it's not always fair, but that's how it's determined. Now, a hard pull is when they go in there and they look at how many times you've late paid. They look at the type of credit that you have. They get the full information, everything that you can see on your credit report, because they need to know, like for if you're getting a loan, they need to know your debt to income ratio and how many accounts you have outstanding, how much access you have to cash if you were to get into a problem that you could go pull from all these cards, so they want to know that you have that responsibility. When that gets done, it does affect your credit score, and not for very long, but it lets people know that you've gone in there to get a pull. Another one who does a hard pull is when you walk in to buy a car, they're going to do a hard pull. Fortunately, there's some things built in so it doesn't hit you as bad as it used to, but they're going to send all that stuff off because they want to know if they can get you a loan for the car right when you walk in. And that's going to happen a lot when you walk into the car. The little waiver that you sign, you may not even realize you're setting yourself up for a hard pull so they can see if you're worthy with their financial institutions that they work with.
Yeah. And I think um I've had people before give me fake information. Or you see in those clickbaits, like they go in, fill out the form, and they're like Mickey Mouse. And you're like, seriously? And they'll put in their real email address and their real phone number and their real address, but they'll like put in a fake date of birth and a fake name. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, if
How
I,
creepy, how creepy is this? I actually got one um from one of the leads, because we've been playing around with them, and taking a
Mhm.
few leads just to see what it was like. And on the leads we got, they changed the address number, but they put their street. The last name was correct, the first name wasn't, and the date of birth was completely off. The phone number and the email were correct, and the email had the full name. So I went into the county tax assessor's office, pulled up the street, and found the correct address. And
Right,
from that was able to get all the information that I needed to actually run the quote. And I sent it to them and I said, just a heads up, some of the information was incorrect, but here's the quote you asked for. And the lady came back and she laughed and she was like, I would just thought I said, no, we got to know correct information in order to pull this, because we even have some carriers that if you don't put in the correct information, will give you the worst rate or the best rate, which either one, I'd rather have the worst rate than the best rate, because if you shared the worst rate
best.
with them, at least it's going to go down. The best rate, oh my goodness,
Oh,
that is not a fun conversation to have.
no, it really isn't. And a lot of times, especially on those clickbaity leads that you can get, I will run, I don't call them quotes, I call them estimates, because let's be honest, you don't have driver's license. You're not running all those reports. You're assuming a lot of information. But if I haven't spoken to them, sometimes it's enough to get that number in front of them and get them to see what I can do. It helps, but man, it's a time suck sometimes. Like, I want to help people, but sometimes they work against us.
I
Like,
know they go into the clickbait, and if it doesn't ask you about accidents and you've had them, even if they weren't your fault, you were still in an accident. If you were in an accident, whether it's your fault or not, if you made a claim, even though you had a hailstorm, you are going to have a higher rate than someone who has had nothing happen. And I think people don't realize that. I had someone tell some people that if they have a comp claim, it doesn't surcharge them. Yes, it does.
Right.
Every company surcharges you if you have a claim, period. And those claims, in most cases, take 5 years to roll off. There are companies like Geico that only look at your last 3 years, but it's all carrier dependent. And
Yep.
part of the reason to have an agent instead of going to this random commercial that incensed you to give either real or fake information is because we know where the discounts live. Like if you're military, we know that not every company is going to give you a military discount. Or if you belong to the Teachers Association of whatever school, or if you're, you know, a Rotary Club member, we can navigate that to you to try to get you to those best rates. And the discounted, just because you get a discount, that doesn't always mean that that's the best rate for you.
Right. Do you think that there should be some sort, and I don't even know how they would do it, but some sort of regulation on these clickbaits? Because, I mean, yes, it's advertising, but to me, it's almost false advertising. They shouldn't be allowed to advertise it unless there's at least they can show that it is possible, like physically possible to get $39 car insurance.
Well, but that is so like, and that's my question. Is it legal? I mean, there's some truth in advertising. Mind you, maybe we should bring an advertiser and have them explain to us why these ads are allowed to run. But we see that all the time. You see it from all different kinds of things that, and ultimately, are you buying protection or a permission slip that's going to get denied later? I mean, honestly, I don't know how many times there's a certain carrier where you can go in and get an absolutely wonderful rate because they do not pull everything until everything's paid. And then when they go in to pull it, if you happen to have something that didn't come up before, or you had a driver that you didn't list, or you said that they're not in your house and they are clearly in your house because that's the address they have on their driver's license, they will add those people in there and your rate will go way up. And as an agent, I can't think of anything worse than giving someone a rate and having it go up. And they use that for, I mean, speaking of bait and switch, where they think they're bringing you in on a lower rate. Well, that's what these people are doing. They're bringing them in on promises that ultimately, yeah, maybe 1 in 100 could have that rate, but it's not true.
Yeah,
And it's
no,
like the sparkle, the fireworks, and the awe of, hey, you could have this. I just I don't get that sometimes, and it makes me kind of sad.
right. I wonder if someday, as litigious as we see the state of the world is right now, where people are suing for everything under the sun, if one of these days someone is going to follow the advice of one of those cute people on TikTok and do what they say, end up with a cheap policy, which means little to no coverage, and try to sue that influencer.
Oh, I know. Because who is legally responsible if the policy doesn't perform the way it was supposed to? And not only that, could you imagine if you had a $500 deductible and you had a $1,500 deductible and you were on, you didn't have $1,500 to put towards that?
Well, they're
Um,
not licensed agents. So is there something to that? Providing it, I mean, it'd be like us providing legal advice to somebody and then getting them in trouble legally. Well, we weren't a lawyer. We don't have the right to do that. So how do they get away with providing insurance advice and not being a licensed agent?
You are absolutely right. One of our next door folks was telling us that he follows a lawyer. on YouTube, and he goes and they were telling him that, like, just information that you would like, if your rate's going up, they're charging you and you shouldn't go through that, and all this stuff, that's how agents get paid. And I was like, it doesn't even work that way,
Right.
and if I were to have a conversation with a lawyer, and I do, sometimes, but they go for the most money. So of course they're going to tell someone, hey, let us help you go after these, folks. But they do it at getting the most money at the detriment of the person who they're supposed to be protecting. I can't tell you how many have filed PIP claims and they're getting $1 million from the other driver. Why would you do that to your person, put a PIP claim on there? So now they have this PIP claim, where there's some carriers that will not write someone who has a PIP claim in the last 5 years. And that's
Right.
personal injury protection. What do you think is the number one assumption people make after buying from one of these ads? And I think that's a little, not all of them buy from these ads, but they might buy into the concept.
That everyone else is lying because what this ad is saying is true is the real truth, and all the other insurance carriers and agents are lying to just get more money. Um,
Have you ever gotten someone who sent you a copy of their quote, but they sent the renewal and not the newest quote? Like
yes.
they sent the one in the past. I've had one where they've marked out the amount that they're paying because they're afraid that that's somehow going to
Oh, your magic
determine.
wand? Yeah, that you can
Yeah.
magic wand it and just magically like make it $5 cheaper and be fabulous at your job. Yeah. I've seen where they like black out like this is classified information, and they like black out so much stuff, and I'm like, I that's not how insurance works. Even if you
Well,
send it completely unredacted.
well, and sometimes they redact stuff like on the coverages that they want, because they don't want you to know what coverages they took, because they want you. Don't send me anything. I mean, if you're that concerned about it, because I'm going to pull it all up from a clue report anyway. And
Right.
they need to know we're pretty good at sharing information with each other. Um, Insurance just does business that way. We know pretty much what people are paying on certain things, but it's nice to, and I know you and I have talked about this before, it's kind of nice to know if it's even worth their time. I have
Yeah.
people who want a quote, and if I'm not going to even be in the ball range, I'll tell them, hey, I am not, I have a gentleman that I just quoted, and I was like, I'm not even near, you're paying half the amount. There's no reason to get a quote with me because you're in a county that is high, and this company has you pretty low, and I'd stay there. I know it hurts that they've gone up in price, but so has everyone else.
Yes. And I have a lot of those conversations that you have to kind of we can't be thinking in the past like what we paid last year or 5 years ago. Right where you are, and we'll talk about this in a year or 6 months or when those claims fall off, because that's a conversation.
Oh yeah. And that's a big conversation. Especially there's a lot of companies that aren't covering for a year anymore. They'll only cover for 6 months so that they can get the right where it needs to be when it needs to be there. And as an agent, I get it. I know that State Farm had an issue where when they first started doing all of these extra like sensors on the back, and all of a sudden you had all of these things going on the the glass, where you had all these detectors and everything. And so all of a sudden it wasn't $3,000 to replace your bumper. Now your whole system, computer system, had to be rigged so that it's still working. The sensors had to be replaced. The bumper was now more expensive and had to come from the factory. And,
Yep.
it just wasn't as easy. And so, as I said, State Farm, what put out that they were paying out $1.25 for every dollar in premium that they took. And so that's not an affordable business model. If you're paying 25 cents more on the claims than what you're taking in. And so rates had to go up, and they tried to do them slowly, but our cars have just gotten fancier and fancier. It's not as easy to get these things taken care of. And so I think that's the big thing that we have to remember, is that it's expensive to get your car work done. Look at what we were going through after COVID. I mean, I had people who had claims and they would turn in their car, and their car, instead of getting fixed, in 2 weeks or in a week, it was taking months because they didn't have the part
Right.
and they were waiting for it. And then all of a sudden, the 30 days of rental car was not helpful because, you need to have the rental car until you have your car replaced, or, it was just really weird. I want you to talk about one more thing on the clickbait thing, because you and I had such a fun time with this. Can you tell them about the funnel?
So we're just gonna get into the weeds with it. My dad collects vinyl records, and they have amassed this huge number of records. And as their daughter and as the licensed insurance agent, I'm like having conversations, and I'm like, we need to get these insured. We've got to get these insured. And of course, I'm the daughter, so they pretty much ignored me for the longest time. Well, finally, my dad found a record that is quite valuable. And he's so proud of this. Like, he was so excited, showing it off when I was over at his house a couple weeks ago. And I finally looked at him and I said, "Are you ready to finally insure this in case something happens?" I said, "Because if the house burns down or a tornado blows it down," I said, "that's not covered at all. It's just not. It exceeds your homeowner's limits. It's not covered." Well, he's like, "Yeah, yeah, we'll work on this." And I was like, "Cool." So I thought he was gonna finally allow me the opportunity to do something. No, no. What did my dad do? And true dad fashion, he got online and he found a website. And he calls me and he's like, "I found insurance on the records. I went ahead and got it." And I was like, "What? Through who?" Like, back in my brain, I'm like, "Please say it's legitimate. Please say it's legitimate." And what was it? Groove Guard. And I was like,
Great name.
it is a fantastic name. I will tell them their marketing was on point. And I'm like, Groove Guard. I'm like, "Who's it through?" And he goes, "I don't know. It's called Groove Guard." And I'm like, "Oh, sweet Jesus." I'm like, "Okay, Dad, where'd you find it?" I'm asking all these questions because I'm trying to determine where on earth this came from. And he's telling me, and I'm like Googling as I'm on the phone. And it took forever. And I'm calling you, of course. And I'm like, "Emily, I cannot find this." Finally, I found it. And this website is very like, guard, protect your vinyl record collection. But there's nothing. There's no contact information. There's a click to get your quote and a simple web form. And I'm like, "Oh gosh, this is scam." they have just given their personal information to a scammer and they're going to get all their bank accounts stolen. And I'm like, and then of course, Emily, in her infinite other half of my brain wisdom, is like, the license number's down at the bottom. And I was like, perfect. And, of course, we sleuthed this and we found that it belonged to somebody, found that somebody's phone number, called them, and he works for just a broker. And he had decided that he wanted to be in this niche market. And in order to funnel those calls to him, they made this web form and this web basic website, so that way people would reach out to him and then he could write them an inland marine policy, which is in fact a true thing. But it's not even like, all he would do is write it. Afterwards, like, he has nothing to do with it. He sells the $300, $400 a year policy and then he's done. And I'm like, how is this legal that you can put this website up, have little to no information? There's not a phone number, an email. You're not telling anyone that the name of the policy isn't Groove Guard. So if something happens, people are going to expect the company's called Groove Guard. It's not. It's just a name they made up. I'm like, oh.
I love that though. I love it. I just what I would have liked to been as a fly on the wall when your dad was looking it up, how he came up with it. If he just looked up record,
He said
records
he
and
just
vinyl
Googled
insurance.
and he kept, well, okay. He just went on the internet and he's old school. He uses Yahoo still to search. God love him. Mm. And so he found it online and he's proud of himself. And I told that agent, and I told him, I said, honestly, I'm his daughter. I'm a licensed agent. I am more than fine as long as it's legitimate. And he walked me through what inland marine company they were using. And I'm like, nope, you're good. Same one I would have went through. And the agent was very nice enough. He did email me a copy of my dad's policy with a note. So I do know all the details in case something happens and there is a loss, because again, my dad is now going to have the conversation of, well, it's insured with Groove Guard. And I'm going to be like, no, dad, it's not.
Anyway, that is terrific. Well, it has been very fun talking to you about clickbait and running a little thing on those funnels, which just crack me up because I can't tell you how many people come in my LinkedIn trying to sell me leads and funnel opportunities. And it is very interesting, but is it ethical? Anyway. No. What do you think, just as our last questions, what do you think what would be something that you would put out if you were doing a TikTok and you were doing a commercial or something along that lines and you wanted to solicit people and get them excited about calling into you? What are some of the things that you think that you would put out there as a enticement to get people to call in?
It's probably a lot of the same information I try to use now. I try to use a lot of like educational snippets. Like I'm having a lot of fun with a series, and I've lovingly dubbed it Did You Know? And just, did you know that credit unions often limit your deductible to $500, but standard banks and auto loans sometimes will allow you to go to $1,000. Call me if you want to talk about this more. And, just little snippets of things like that. And I'm hoping that, I can showcase that as an agent, we have knowledge that we love to share. And I would love to share it with anyone who will listen long enough. We do the same thing all the time. That's why we're insurance nerds. We like to talk about insurance. Uh, I would continue with a lot of that type of things because insurance is fun for us. We know it's not fun for others, but it's fun for us. Um, Case in point, we're at podcast episode number 2 about insurance. So,
And lots more to come.
yes.
Um, how do you think we can advocate for a client still saying price conscious? Um, and I think for me, like I make sure that they pick limits that they can afford. Like I tell them, here's I give them the option and say, look, that's going to save you by going up to $1,000 on your deductible on your comp. It's going to save you a whopping $6 for the term. So let's do 250. Or
Right.
I try to do things that will mean something to them and show them that they have less out of pocket if something were to happen, especially if it's going to be an issue. With new roofs, I honestly tell people you can go a little bit higher in your deductible. Here we have you at a class, a UL class 4. It's less likely that something's going to happen. It's a possibility, but
Right.
for the first couple of years, you're getting a lower rate. You could see if it's worth it just to pick that deductible up, especially it's saving you this amount. And so you can kind of take that savings and put it away and be ready to pay out the deductible if it came up high.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just making a plan with them. Like based off of where you are in your affordability, in the coverages you need, that we can kind of game plan what we're going to do to try to offset the cost. Does that mean we're going to, you know, raise this deductible, or for the foreseeable future, while you have to have full coverage, are we going to kind of adjust your liability? We can talk about the options. So I think I kind of like to just tell people we're partnering on this. I'm helping explain everything, guide you, and plan this out. So that way, when, as one of my best friends is in insurance also, she always says, when your underwear's in a tree, you don't feel like you're going to be SOL. So I think just having that partnership with clients is the hugest, most important thing.
Yeah. And they know. The other thing that I think is really good is, as agents and being with them constantly, we constantly get notification if rates are going down in a particular area, or if an area is not something they want to write. And so we can have either hard or great conversations with consumers to let them know, hey, your 6 months is enough, but I actually can get you a much lower rate on this particular person right now because they're going down, they're hungry for this particular area. And so have great conversations, especially if it's a pro-rate company, where they can save some money and they don't have to wait till term. A lot of people think they have to wait till the end of a term, and you don't. You can get savings whenever it comes up.
Yeah. And I think that's why having an agent that will have those conversations with you and not rush you off the phone, or, you know, not return your phone calls or ignore you, is important.
Yeah. Or I'm not going to keep you for that full term because I don't want to have to deal with paying any money back or something, but is always looking for the best option for you.
Right.
What is one myth you want to bust for good?
When you have to add your young driver, that drives me batty. Like, and I wish all the carriers would be more like firm on their line instead of making it a gray area, even though state law tells you when they have to be added. There's a carrier, it's a big, huge carrier, big name carrier, and they are telling people that they don't have to add the young drivers to the policy until they turn 17. Regardless, they just don't need to be added. And I have literally had to copy the little blurb from the law that says when they have to be added, when a licensed driver is added to the policy. And I'm like, well, per the state, this is what it is, regardless. That's the myth I would really like to just bust right there, that everyone worked off the same field, because I guarantee it is causing a nightmare in claims. And that big carrier, I guarantee they're wishy-washy on whether or not they're paying those claims, because the law states and is very clear. So how about you? What myth?
I dislike the full coverage thing, that full coverage information that comes over, and having that discussion where like a lender will tell them they need to carry full coverage without giving them what full coverage is and how they define it. Because there's no such thing as full coverage. You could even take advantage of every single coverage and endorsement that a company added, and it's still not full coverage as we would imagine it as humans. When I hear full coverage, I think I'm covered for everything. So if something
Right.
happens and I need to make a claim, it's covered. And I think that can be so disappointing to customers that I do not like that term used.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a bad marketing. Like, it's a bad word,
Yeah.
especially in insurance.
Well, and they just mean that you have comp and collision, but they don't
Correct.
necessarily define the deductibles they want you to have until they get a copy of the proof of insurance. And then they're like, whoa, you have $1,000 deductible? You can't do $1,000 deductible. But I don't know. I think we've all been lured by clickbait, and there's no shame to that. I told you I watched that ad all the way through till he got to his cell phone to find her cheaper insurance. But I think good insurance lets you get out of the marketing maze and into a policy that actually works for you. And I think that's the goal.
True. It very much is. It's at least our goal. So,
Yeah. Because what is cheap now might cost you later.